Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Montgomery County Council. It is Thursday, May 25th, and we are going to start today with a number of proclamations. And first, we will have a proclamation recognizing Foster Care Month, and that will be led by Councilmember Stewart and Councilmember Albernaz.
All right, good morning, everyone. I'd like to invite our guest here today who will be receiving the proclamation. Welcome. Today and this month, as we're ending May, we take time to recognize and thank foster parents and those who work to support the families. Foster parents are ensuring the youth in need in our community are safe and that their needs are provided for. Foster care is crucial in providing stable, loving homes and support young people in need who are to thrive. Foster parents' willingness to open their hearts and homes to children and help them learn life skills, reunite with their birth families, transition to independence, and many other responsibilities is beyond commendable, and we thank them. I also want to thank the advocates who work to support these families. Your dedication and compassion are truly remarkable, and you play a vital role in making a positive difference in their lives. Thank you for your dedication and compassion, and I will turn it over to my colleague, Councilmember Albernaz.
Thank you so much. I was a couple minutes late. Family of six and a broken washing machine equals trouble in the morning. But I am here and I am thrilled to be here. This is such an important opportunity for us to acknowledge both the children in our foster care system, the incredible caring adults who are willing to open their homes and show their love and provide support to these children in their greatest hour of need, but also the incredible social workers and case managers and the staff who work tirelessly to support those youth, to support those foster parents, but also to connect these youth with parents. This is an extraordinary time, and right now in our country, there are 391,000 children and youth in the foster care system nationally. And we are fortunate to have great leaders among us. Participating today is Ms. Lisa Merkin, the Director of the Child Welfare Services here in the Department of Health and Human Services, Jean Marie Garcia, the President of the Montgomery County Foster Parent Association, and the one and only Ms. Agnes Leshner, the past Director of Child Welfare Services, representing our nonprofit organizations as well as for Montgomery's kids. So first we will hear from Ms. Jean Marie Garcia, followed by Agnes Leshner, and then we will read the proclamation.
We just want to thank you on behalf of the Montgomery County parents. We have some of the most amazing foster parents in this county that work tirelessly to support our youth. And so we just thank you for the acknowledgement. We appreciate it very much.
We are very grateful for all of the foster parents who have opened their homes to children who have been physically, sexually abused, and chronically neglected. They come with a lot of challenges, and the families who take them in have a lot of challenges ahead of them. So thank you to all the foster parents who do this very difficult job. Thanks, Gabe.
And there are many opportunities to become a foster parent. We encourage everyone to please do so, and please visit the county's website at the Department of Health and Human Services to learn how. We will now read the proclamation.
You want to start?
Sure. Why don't I do the first two and then you take it home?
Okay.
Instead of alternating.
Yes.
Whereas, in 1853, Charles Loring Brace, a minister, founded a program called Children's Aid New York after noticing many children living in neglect and homelessness in the streets of New York City. The program laid the groundwork for the modern-day foster care system by providing housing, food, fresh air programs, and schooling to support thousands of orphaned children. And whereas, in 1919, the Children's Bureau, as part of the United States Department of Labor, published minimum standards of child welfare, highlighting the importance of keeping a child in their home whenever possible, and if removal from a home was necessary, offering an environment of home life through foster placements. And whereas,
Oh, my glasses. In 1988, President Ronald Reagan announced a presidential proclamation establishing May as National Foster Care Month. And whereas Foster Care Month is a time to acknowledge the 463,000 American children currently in foster care, their foster care parents, and the volunteers, mentors, child welfare professionals, and policymakers who help them find permanent homes and meaningful connections. And whereas the Montgomery County Council recognizes the importance of foster care and the impact it has on the lives of foster children. Now therefore be it resolved that the County Council of Montgomery County, Maryland hereby proclaims May 2023 as Foster Care Awareness Month, presented this day, the 25th day of May in the year 2003, signed by myself, Councilmember Alvarez, and Council President Evan Glass. And so now we can come take a picture.
Thank you very much, council members, for that proclamation, and to the entire foster care network for the love that you share with all the children in our community. So thank you very much. The next proclamation is one to recognize Chesapeake Bay Day. That will be led by council members Stewart, Balcom, and myself.
And for this one, we'd like to invite our guests down who are receiving the proclamation today. Thank you. We have Karen Madsen from the Conservation Montgomery. I don't know why I try to read this without my glasses. I cannot do it. And Diana Conway from Potomac Conservancy joining us today. All right. I guess I'll start. All right. Thank you for joining us today for Chesapeake Awareness Week. And today, and the first week of June, we urge all residents to recognize the importance of the Chesapeake Bay to our economy and environment, and to engage in activities that will help preserve and sustain our county's watersheds and the Chesapeake Bay. As we do so this coming week, we need to also recognize the first and longest caregivers of the Bay. The word Chesapeake derives from the Algonquin Native American word, and we recognize that many of the tributaries are also named after the indigenous people who lived on and near the bay and continue to be its caretakers. And today, as we recognize those original caretakers, we acknowledge our own responsibility to protect and care for the bay. The actions we take to mitigate stormwater, erosion, and flooding throughout our area have a direct effect on the health of the bay. What we do here affects our regional neighbors, also in Prince George's, DC, and Southern Maryland. And I want to thank the environmentalists and residents who work to protect and preserve the bay. And we recognize how much more work we have yet to do for the bay. And now I will turn it over to our Council President, Evan Glass, and Chair of the Transportation and Environment Committee.
Well, thank you very much, Councilmember Stewart. It's wonderful to have the T&E committee here together, showing solidarity and support for the Bay and having our incredible advocates as well. The Chesapeake Bay are the lungs, or is the lungs of our region. And everything that we do affects the Bay, which is why all of our water restoration work, and our runoff work. And everything else that we really do literally trickles down into the bay. And that's why it is so important. And this is a collective effort, and our environmental stewards and champions continue pushing us in the right direction. And, you know, I'd be remiss if I did not thank also Senator Ben Cardin, who has made this his life work as well. And from his perch on Capitol Hill, he has funneled so much money into the bay to help clean it up, and it has proven very beneficial and successful. So thank you, Senator Cardin. Next, Councilmember Balcom.
Thank you. I think this is a great intersection of the T and the E portion from the Chesapeake Bay. It's a very important waterway for transportation, but and the economy, but so important for our environment. We need to make sure that we continue to do what we can to mitigate the impact. And I'm so pleased to have our environmental partners here today who are doing a very important work, and we want to be partners in that. So thank you.
And I also want to recognize that we've been joined by Landrum Beard of the Rock Creek Conservancy. Thank you this morning for joining us. And now we'll read the proclamation. I'll ask my colleagues to come up. And Council President Glass, do you want to start?
Okay. The County Council of Montgomery County, Maryland proclamation. Whereas the Chesapeake Bay is the largest and most productive estuary in the United States, spanning across Maryland, Delaware, New York, Pennsylvania, Virginia, West Virginia, and the District of Columbia, and serves as a vital environmental, recreational, and economic resource to approximately 18 million people living within its watershed. And
whereas the Chesapeake Bay produces more than 400 million pounds of seafood harvest each year, with its watershed serving as home to more than 76,000 farms that contribute more than $6.8 billion to the region's economy and food to millions of Americans. And whereas
all 1,500 miles of streams in Montgomery County flow into the bay, and joint efforts by Indigenous peoples, local government, businesses, nonprofits, and residents of Montgomery County have resulted in a comprehensive approach utilizing green, innovative practices that reduce the pollutants in local streams and rivers and help restore the Chesapeake Bay. And
whereas Montgomery County, joining other local jurisdictions and organizations, has annually commemorated the first week of June as Chesapeake Bay Awareness Week, with events and programming designed to mark the progress and educate residents on the need to continue efforts critical for the protection and restoration of the Chesapeake Bay. Bring us home.
now therefore be it resolved that the County Council of Montgomery County, Maryland hereby proclaims June 3rd to the 11th, 2023 as Chesapeake Bay Awareness Week, and the Montgomery County Council urges all residents to recognize the importance of the Chesapeake Bay to our economy and environment, and to engage in activities that will help preserve and sustain our county watersheds and the Chesapeake Bay. Presented on this day, the 25th of May in the year 2023, signed by myself, Council President Evan Glass, and Council Member Marilyn Balcom. Thank you.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you to our IT team who helped run some interference with us this morning. And so we appreciate everybody's patience. We are now going to move on to general business. Madam Clerk, are there any announcements?
Yes, good morning, Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, council members. I have one announcement. The council is seeking applicants for 2 upcoming vacancies on the Montgomery County Board of Appeals. The deadline to apply is Monday, June 19th at 5:00 p.m. Information can be found on the council's website or by emailing council.clerk@montgomerycountymd.gov. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The clerk has circulated the minutes from March 28th and May 2nd. Are there any changes of those minutes? Seeing none, those minutes are approved. We are now going to move into legislative day number 18, an introduction of bills. The first bill being introduced today is Expedited Bill 2623, Special Capital Improvements Projects, White Flint Fire Station 23. The lead sponsor is the council president at the request of the county executive. A public hearing is scheduled for June 13th at 1:30 p.m. and action is scheduled for June 20th. I see Ms. Wellens and Mr. Levchenko. If you'd like to provide some context, Mr. Levchenko.
Yes, by the county charter and the county code, capital projects that exceed a certain threshold are required to have a special capital improvement project bill enacted by the council to move them forward. There was one such project that met that criteria this year, which is the White Flint Fire Station 23. So we have an expedited bill before you today for introduction and for hearing and action by the council before the end of the fiscal year in order to comply with that provision.
Thank you very much. Not seeing any comments from colleagues, that legislation is introduced. Thank you, Mr. Olchenko. Thank you, Ms. Wellens. Next is the introduction of Expedited Bill 2723, Police Advisory Commission repeal. The lead sponsors are council members Luedke and Katz. A public hearing is scheduled for June 13th at 1:30 p.m. and a Public Safety Committee work session is scheduled for June 26th. Ms. Luedke.
Thank you, Mr. President. And colleagues, Public Safety Chair Katz and I are introducing this bill just as a housekeeping matter, essentially, and to reduce duplicative functions. So the PAC was originally brought into effect in March of 2020. And of course, this is part of the ongoing response and demand for increased accountability in law enforcement practice and the reimagining of 21st century law enforcement, which is critically important. And the members of that body were first appointed in July of 2020. But contemporaneous with that action, and Montgomery County's work in authorizing the PAC, the Maryland General Assembly, under the leadership of Speaker of the House Adrian Jones, convened the work group to address police reform and accountability in Maryland, chaired by Delegate Vanessa Atterbury, who at the time was vice chair of the House Judiciary Committee and now chairs Ways and Means. The state's work group met starting on June 23rd, 2020, and met 5 additional times throughout fall of 2020, leading to the drafting and enactment of the Police Accountability Act of 2021. That state law, or set of laws, because it was more than one bill that encompasses the Police Accountability Act, offered broad sweeping reform to the law enforcement profession and included additional focus on things like ensuring implicit bias training was being done for all officers, a statutory provision on use of force that is more stringent than the traditional Fourth Amendment jurisprudence in that area, and specific and related to this issue, repeal of the Law Enforcement Officers' Bill of Rights and replacement with a provision that required each of Maryland's 23 counties and Baltimore City to create a police accountability board, which is found at section 3102 of the public safety article, and an administrative charging committee found at 3-104 of the public safety article. The Policing Advisory Committee and the Police Accountability Board, the PAC being the Montgomery County created entity, and the PAB being the entity that is now required under state law and currently exists. This body passed the local legislation authorizing the creation of the PAB last spring, and it is now up and fully functioning and is staffed by Executive Director Fatmata Bari. The PAB is mandated by state law. Having 2 entities with similar names and seemingly similar functions, with the Police Accountability Board having broader duties that were meant to be complementary to the Administrative Charging Committees and part of the larger overall policy movement of police accountability, creates confusion among residents. And Director Barry has already been going out and doing community outreach and engagement to help educate residents on the process and how to file complaints and what happens with those complaints once they go over to the ACC, et cetera. But a lack of clarity around how to engage and how to file complaints, because there are existence of bodies that may seem similar but don't have exactly the same functions or can't carry out addressing those citizens' complaints, can erode trust in the process and needlessly cause confusion among the public on complex legal issues. And it's also important that the PAB and the ACC, which are required by state law, are able to carry out their work in a complementary fashion without confusion with a third entity that also may purport to speak on behalf of the county or advising the county. The PAB and the Administrative Charging Committee began to receive complaints under the state and local laws as authorized here on July 1st, 2023, so just around the corner. And I note that former council member Hans Riemer, who brought the legislation forward that created the PAC, recognized just last year that there might be a need to revisit all of this given the changes in state law and given that we have now in Montgomery County created our local board as required by state law. For my colleagues, it's important to note that both the chair and the vice chair of the PAC have voiced their support for sunsetting that body, in addition to other commissioners. In fact, one of the members of the PAC resigned in November, stating that the role of the commission is no longer essential because the Police Accountability Board now exists. And they will, in fact, be advising the council moving forward on these issues. So my goal is simply to streamline matters for the public and recognize that each and every resident has the opportunity to share thoughts with the council and with the PAB regarding law enforcement at any time, and to ensure that the proper channels are used for addressing concerns related to police misconduct, facilitating discussions with local chiefs and our sheriff, and review of the work of the administrative charging committees as set forth in state law and authorized here locally, and outcomes of matters referenced to the administrative charging committee on a quarterly basis. These are specific deliverables critical to the success of our state's broad sweeping law enforcement reform legislation, and those rest with the Police Accountability Board, not with the PAC. With that, I yield back.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Lutke. Councilmember Katz.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Do you think there's anything for me to add after that she's explained? There is not, but I do believe that it's very necessary to emphasize that the terms for the Police Advisory Commission, and the names get confusing, but for the Police Advisory Commission, which we also call the PAC, that their terms are up July 31st. And if we were ever going to have this discussion, we should have it before we would even consider having anyone be appointed for additional terms. So I think it's very necessary. Obviously, Councilmember Lukey has gone through the many reasons that this should be considered, and beyond everything else, it is just plain confusing for the names themselves. So I think this is the right time to have this discussion, and we will have that, as you have noted, at public hearing and public safety. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councilmember Jawando.
Thank you. Good morning. Yes, it's good to check your upcoming bills so you know that things are coming, in the midst of budget. I was a little surprised by this bill, having worked very closely with Councilmember Reamer on the drafting of the legislation in 2019. And we did acknowledge, as we were working through the PAB, that there was some overlap. Obviously there's big differences though in these in their bills, in how they function. This body was created, the PAC was created to advise the council, and is appointed by the council. Whereas the other body, obviously state mandated, very important, in addition to differences in duties, is appointed primarily by the county executive. That was something we discussed at the time as a separate branch of government, as one of the reasons for passing the bill. The other thing I would say is that July 1st, the duties of the PAB kick in, and one of their primary and main responsibilities is receiving complaints from the public about police misconduct. We don't have a sense of the scale and scope and time and weight of those responsibilities that are their primary, whereas the PAC is only a advising body on policy and regulation and implementation of laws. And so they do serve different functions. That being said, there is certainly, I think, an important discussion that we have had earlier about what can be maybe the overlap, or does it need to be removed. Happy to have the discussion, but I think it would be premature to end it without getting in a deep discussion with both bodies. My understanding is that this was a surprise to most members of the PAC. There was a letter sent just shortly before introduction. So I think it would make a lot of sense to have an in-depth discussion with those members, both past and present, and talk this through before we repeal it. So we'll have that discussion. This is the formal start of that process. But I do think at a time when we are looking at changing the roles and responsibilities of law enforcement as part of our reimagining public safety. We want to have as many people in the community engaged in that as possible, as opposed to a board that is just focused on a very important role of misconduct and has a limited number of members that are appointed by the county executive. So I look forward to the discussion and appreciate the time. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilmember Mink.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to thank Councilmembers Luedeke and Katz for their introduction. I do think that for the reasons that you gave, that it's an important conversation to have. We need to be sorting out exactly what these entities are, what they're going to be doing. Do we need both? Why or why not? I do think that this makes sense as a time to have that conversation. And obviously, we're going to get to continue that conversation in committee. I think Councilmember Jawando had some good ideas about ways to make sure that that is a productive and fruitful and thoughtful conversation. And one of the things that's on my mind following the conversation actually that we had with Director Barry when she came before the committee during budget discussion was about considering, what is the capacity that's going to be needed, and that we were going to come back in a few months, since they'll start taking cases in July, come back in a few months to see if they might need additional staffing and things of that nature. So as we go into this conversation, one of the things that I'm thinking about is whether this is going to be something that we might want to revisit after actually seeing the output and kind of figuring out the capacity issues, a year from now, potentially, wanting to, if we're going to set a sunset date, we might not want to set that until we actually see what we're wanting to see produced, until we've seen that happening. So that's some of the things that are on my mind, and I look forward to having this conversation in committee.
Thank you. Councilmember Sales.
Yes, I would just like to associate my comments with my colleagues. I think it's always good to evaluate ways that our boards, committees, and commissions can be efficient bodies in advising the council on very important decisions. And I know that, the legislation clearly requires the Policing Advisory Commission to produce each year, July 1st, an annual report of its functions, activities, accomplishments, plans, and objectives. And I think that's going to be helpful with getting the Police Advisory Board up to speed, which will be taking on cases, as Councilmember Mink mentioned. And so I look forward to a joint committee session where we can hear from both bodies, hear from the public, and then see what they do have on their agenda and how they can best advise us, and if both entities are needed. And so I just want to make sure that we're not expediting bills to eliminate a committee, but we are ensuring that we're engaging the public in these thoughtful discussions when we're eliminating a committee that was founded on such traumatic and a very important time in our county and our community. And so I look forward to the discussions that will occur. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Luedeke.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to note that, and I appreciate all the comments and the discussion that needs to be had, when we have the public hearing and when we have the discussion in public safety. But I did want to comment or share from the chair of the PAC, Eric Sterling, that he wrote that this makes sense. I think the PAC should figure out how it wants to wind down in the next few months. So with that, thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. There will be conversations. As I noted, a public hearing is scheduled for June 13th, and then a public safety committee is scheduled for June 26th. Ms. Oconee, do you have anything else to add?
Good morning, Council President, and good morning, Council members. Just real quick, I did want to point out on the second page of the staff report, where it says the members of the Police Accountability Board were appointed on June 28, 2022, by Resolution 19-1313, to terms that would start on July 1st. It should be 2022. Their terms did start 2022, not 2023. But nothing else to add except to just confirm one of the comments, I think, by Councilmember Jawando about the appointment process. I did want to confirm that the PAB members of the PAB are appointed by the county executive, subject to confirmation by the council.
Thank you very much, Ms. Oconee, for that clarification. And with that, expedited Bill 2723 is introduced. Thank you. Moving on to the consent calendar. Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Lutke, seconded by Vice President Friedson. All those in favor? And that is unanimous. Now we're going to move to a series of budget resolutions. Moving forward with a process that began a few months ago. And so the following budget resolutions are now up for final vote for the council. I would like to propose that we vote on items 1 through 9 en bloc unless there are any objections. And those items are county government, Montgomery County Public Schools, Montgomery College, Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission, the Revenue Authority, Housing Opportunities Commission, aggregate capital budget for county general obligation bonds, spending affordability guidelines, aggregate capital budget for park and planning bonds, spending affordability guidelines, and FY24 state participation. Is there a motion?
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Katz, seconded by Councilmember Sales. All those in favor of items 1 through 9? And that is unanimous. I would now like to propose that we vote on items 10 through 15 en bloc unless there are any objections. Those items are county government, Montgomery County Public Schools, Montgomery College, and this is for the FY24 operating budget. County government, Montgomery County Public Schools, Montgomery College, Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission, administrative expense budget of the Washington Suburban Transit Commission, and aggregate operating budget spending affordability guidelines. And I'll turn it over to Councilmember Vice President Friedson for a comment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Section G of Resolution 10 lists all non-competitive contract awards that will be funded by county government under the FY24 budget. These are awards that have been deemed by the Chief Administrative Officer to serve in the public interest. Section G for FY24 includes a contract between the county and Bethesda Green in the amount of $30,900 to fund a green business certification program. As I disclosed during the council meeting on May 12th, when the possibility of this contract first came to my attention, I serve on the board of Bethesda Green in my personal capacity. Therefore, I'd like to recuse myself from considering or voting on the Bethesda Green contract, which is reflected on page 5 of Section G in Resolution number 10. Thank you, Mr. President.
Very good. Vice President Friedson's recusal of item number 10 regarding county government is noted. Do I have a motion to move items 10 through 15?
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Lutke, seconded by Councilmember Balcom. All those in favor? Pardon me? No, this is an unblock.
Oh, you're blocking.
As I noted, I'd like to move that items 10 through 15 be voted on en bloc. No, en bloc. Mhm.
Could I make a motion to go through them individually?
So parliamentary
So
procedure.
we already have
I thought you said-
we already have a motion
Okay.
on the floor. So all those in favor of the motion. So it's been moved and seconded that action items 10 through 15 be voted
Could I
on
make
right now.
Can I make a comment?
Not right now. We're about to vote on this motion.
Mr. President, she's asking to speak on the motion.
Right.
So
Could-
which
yes,
is allowed.
thank you. Could I
You
speak on the
asked
motion?
for consent on the en bloc, by the way.
Sorry, I thought you said unblocked instead of
In
in
block.
block. I apologize.
There we
I
go.
would've-
Well, so there's a motion and there's a second to take these items. So Councilmember Mink.
Okay, apologies for the confusion.
It's okay.
Just wanted to ask for the opportunity to vote on these individually. As you know, during the straw vote, I had voted against the budget, so there are portions of these that I would vote for and vote against, and I just wanted those votes to be accurately reflected in the record.
Duly noted. Is
So
there
could
a
I make
motion?
so could I make a motion to vote on these unblocked / individually?
So, I'm happy to second it.
Sure. Well, so it was, I motioned for 10 through 15 by unanimous consent, and there is an objection. So we'll go through each of these items individually.
Mr. President, can we, but since there was a motion and it was seconded on the moving of items 10 through 15 to vote to approve items 10 through 15 together, and I don't know if Ms. Wellens might need to advise us on the logistics here, but that motion was already pending to take an action prior to a competing motion being offered. And
That was my understanding of parliamentary procedure as well until colleagues said otherwise. Ms. Wellens?
Well, I mean, I believe that technically that the council member Mink could move to amend the motion, which is what I interpreted her to be doing. I think that's, and she had a second, that you could hold an actual vote on that amended motion first before proceeding if you would like. Yes.
On clarification.
Yeah, I believe that any council member has the right to object to voting in block.
Right.
So we only vote in block when there's consensus. There isn't consensus,
Right.
so the motion is no longer available because there's an objection. So I just want to confirm that, but I'm fairly certain under our rules and traditional Robert's Rules of Orders that
Fine doing it point by point.
each individual voting member of the body has the right to vote individually
That's
unless
right.
there's consensus.
With apologies, colleagues.
No, we're okay. So first item is county government, which Vice President Friedson has noted his abstention from. All those in favor of the county government FY24 operating budget item, raise your hand.
Yeah, just can I clarify that too? I'm voting for this with the exception of the of the note that I made earlier on recusal on the one item within this. So I just want to clarify that.
Understood. Thank you for the clarification. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Second item on the FY24 operating budget is Montgomery County Public Schools. Who voted against number 10? Oh, okay. All those in favor of item number 10, county government, raise your hand. That is, all those opposed? That is 10 to 1. That is approved. All those in favor of Montgomery County Public Schools FY24 operating budget? All those opposed? That is 10 to 1. Budget passes. All those in favor of Montgomery College, raise your hand. That is unanimous. All those in favor of the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission? That is unanimous. All those in favor of the administrative expense budget of the Washington Suburban Transit Commission, raise your hand. That is unanimous. And final item on this is the aggregate operating budget spending affordability guidelines. All those in favor? All those opposed? And that passes 10 to 1. Okay. I will enunciate. I would like to propose that we move items 16 through 18 in block unless there are any objections, and those items are resolutions to approve the WSSC Water FY24 to 29 Capital Improvements Program, the WSSC Water FY24 Capital and Operating Budgets, and the County Cable Communications Plan. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Lutke, seconded by Councilmember Mink. All those in favor? And that is unanimous. Next, I would like to turn to a resolution to approve a resolution to establish the FY24 property tax rates. Do I have a motion to approve this resolution? Moved by Councilmember Katz. Seconded by Councilmember Albornoz. All those in favor of the resolution? That is 7. All those opposed? That is 4. The resolution passes. And I would like to propose that we vote on items 20 and 21 in block, unless there are any objections, and those are resolutions to approve. A resolution to authorize the substitution of current revenue for general obligation bonds in FY24, and a resolution to set amount of property tax credit for income tax offset. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Lutke, seconded by Councilmember Sales. All those in favor? And that is unanimous. So, colleagues, congratulations on passing the FY24 budget. The 11 members of this body, as has been evident for everybody to see, have had different views and different opinions on this budget. Some council members wanted higher taxes, some wanted lower taxes, and this is what democracy is all about. The end result was one of consensus, recognizing that we supported labor contracts for our county and school employees. We support a strong maintenance of our social safety net, and we support the preservation of our reserve funds. And while there may be disagreements about this budget, there should be no disagreement that this budget process has been more transparent than any other in recent memory. Each committee chair reported their recommendations to the full council in open, televised meetings, and I abolished the omnibus budget consent calendar. I directed council staff to identify and publicly report proposed increases from the county executive and the committees, and each staff report was readily available to the public in advance of those conversations. Our council staff is apolitical. They are non-political, professional council staff members who try to discern the will of this body. Some council members wanted to spend less and have a lower tax rate, while others wanted to spend more and have a higher tax rate. The end result was one of consensus, with a majority of this body casting their support for a $6.7 billion budget that makes significant investments in our schools, our workforce, and our essential services for residents. This did not leave much room for discretionary spending. Moreover, I extended time for public testifying in person and online, which increased the number of speakers at our public budget hearings, with 166 residents testifying and thousands more calling, emailing, and sharing their thoughts with us on social media. And at the end of the day, this body has chosen to take a path of consensus, balancing our fiduciary responsibilities with the needs of our residents. I am proud of the way that this council worked through the budget and focused on the diverse needs of our residents, and we all know that the work continues. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.